Hi, I'm Neha Matthews, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. India is gearing up for US President Donald Trump's first ever visit to the country on Monday, February 24th, and it's bound to be a spectacle. Plans for any sort of trade deal between the US and India, however, seem to have been put on the back burner given President Trump's latest comments.
Well, we can have a trade deal with India, but I'm really saving the big deal for later on. We're doing a very big trade deal with India. We'll have it. I don't know if it'll be done before the election, but we'll have a very big deal with India.
What is worth mentioning is the scale and the sensation this event is set out to be. And this, of course, is very good optics for both leaders.
We're not treated very well by India, but I happen to like Prime Minister Modi a lot. And he told me we'll have 7 million people between the airport and the event. And the stadium, I understand, is sort of semi-under construction, but it's going to be the largest stadium in the world. So it's going to be very...
On today's episode, we're going to take a larger look at President Trump's visit to India. We're going to talk about how the city of Ahmedabad is preparing and what India hopes this visit means for diplomatic relations between the two countries. But first, what does the Trump administration hope to get out of this visit? This is a standalone trip, something President Trump rarely does. Is it meant for the optics, to salvage his reputation with diplomacy efforts? The Washington Post's India bureau chief, Joanna Slater, was kind enough to join us to explain what the US perspective behind the trip could be. Joanna, last year, the Howdy Modi event that we had in Texas was a sort of victory lap for Prime Minister Modi. His BJP government had won the Indian national elections with a very overwhelming majority in May 2019. And now with the US presidential race heating up, how much of this visit is, the optics of the leaders of the world's largest democracy, the world's oldest democracy, hand in hand?
So I think many of these official visits are about the optics, right? I think that's a common theme when you have leaders together. There's a lot of ceremony. So in that sense, this is not very different from that. When President Obama came in 2015, remember, he was the first US president to attend the Republic Day festivities. So that was also a lot about the optics of these two democracies side by side, et cetera. And this is a kind of new version of that script.
How would you describe President Trump's approach to foreign policy?
in a word or a sentence or less? I think Trump is known for his transactional approach to foreign policy. He clearly has a focus on trade and he wants to negotiate the best deal for the US. He also is very eager to burnish his own reputation, and sometimes that seems to be the main priority in some of his foreign policy endeavors.
The fact that, say, with the Howdy Modi event, we know that Trump talks about it a lot, even till date, and he's expecting, say, 7 million people to show up, 70 lakh people to show up. That's a lot of numbers. Would that make him look really good on a world platform?
That's a very good question. I think that is exactly what he is hoping for from this visit. I mean, he is hoping for a trip that makes him look like a great leader on the world stage. That is something he can use as his reelection campaign heats up. Now, there will not be 7 million people on the streets of Ahmedabad on Monday, but there will be, 100,000 people from what city officials tell me, and that's not a small crowd. And U.S. presidents in the past, as they have run for reelection, they have gone abroad to hold large rallies to, again, burnish, their reputation as statesmen. The thing with Trump is that there are not very many places he can go to do that where he will not also face large protests. And India is one of the places where he will not face that kind of reception.
I mean, I was also wondering about the fact that this is a standalone visit and he is choosing to skip visiting Pakistan, even though, Prime Minister Imran Khan has asked him multiple times. Is that a sort of message that's being given out to Pakistan at all?
I don't think so. Again, this is just my sense. It sounds like Trump is genuinely, let's say, fond of Prime Minister Modi, and they bonded in Houston, and Modi made him an attractive proposal. He said, come to India, we'll have a rally even bigger than the one we had in Houston. Trump doesn't like to travel very much. And so I think he found whatever proposal Modi made appealing in and of itself. I think visiting Pakistan is more complicated from a number of standpoints.
Okay, so let's not read too much into that at all. But Joanna, I'm wondering now, you've reported on President Trump, you've reported on Prime Minister Modi, and there tends to be a comparison between the two of them because, they rose to power in somewhat similar circumstances with populist policies. Would you say the two leaders are similar at all?
I would say they share some traits. Certainly, they share a certain type of politics, as you mentioned, a very nationalist, populist politics that motivates both through hope and through fear. I think they have that in common. Personality wise, I don't think they have a lot in common. The contrast that I like to draw is the fact that Prime Minister Modi has not held a genuine press conference in his entire time in office. And if President Trump ever starts holding a press conference, it usually lasts for about an hour. So they have a very different approach to the media and their own public pronouncements. Of course, Prime Minister Modi is very careful. He's very strategic, even calculating. President Trump is, let's call it, he's a little more impulsive. So personality-wise, I don't see them as having much in common, but certainly in their politics.
Next, Shubhajit Roy, who covers foreign affairs for the Indian Express, joins me to talk about India's perspective, what's standing in the way for a trade deal, and why we're going above and beyond for this particular presidential visit. Shubhajit, this is the first time that US President Donald Trump is visiting India. Is this visit a big deal?
So this is, as you rightly said, this is US President Trump's first visit to India as a president. He's obviously been here before, but in his private citizen's capacity when he was a businessman. But he had promised when in 2017, when Prime Minister Modi had gone to the White House, he had promised to the Prime Minister that he would come during his term. So this essentially is fulfilling his promise before he heads into elections later this year. Apart from that, this is, if you put it in context with presidential visits in the last 70 years, you will find that, there have not been too many visits in the last 70 years in which the first visit actually happened only in 1959. So between 1947 to 2000, there were only 3 US president visits, whereas from 2000 to 2020, in the last 20 years, you've had 4 visits by US presidents, and this will be the 5th. So that's just to give you context. And also, this is possibly the first time when the US president is making a standalone visit to India. For example, he's not clubbing any other country, say Pakistan or China or any other country in the neighborhood. So he's coming all the way from the US to visit India only as of now.
Okay, so also in this background of this visit, we have the shadow of a trade deal that the two countries, India and America, just haven't been able to figure out. We have negotiated a lot. There has been talk about India opening up imports of US poultry, US dairy. But at this point, we haven't been able to come to a compromise that pleases both countries. What has gotten in the way for this trade deal?
So to put it in context, the US is India's largest trading partner, goods and services combined. And this bilateral trade in goods and services has grown by more than 10% per year over the last 2 years. And right now, in 2018, the figures were around $142 billion. So when you have such a large quantum of trading between two countries, there are bound to be disappointments and issues, and whatever India may say or US trade establishment might do, there would be points of disagreements. So, for example, the GSP withdrawal by the US as it pushes for more America First policy, and India also is pushing for the Make in India policy. So both these policies have not been able to be in sync with each other. But having said that, there are a number of areas where the two countries have come together, and defense is one of the areas where it would be. But there are many conflicting issues, from steel and aluminum tariffs to medical devices to insurance, and a whole lot of issues where India and the US have several disagreements right now.
There's also been talk of India buying 24 helicopters from the US during the visit. Is this a major military deal?
Well, the Indian government maintains that defense acquisition is an ongoing process and they don't link visits to defense deals. But as we have seen in the past, like in the Rafale deal announcement during the French president and the prime minister's conversations in the recent years, this time we could see a deal being announced, at least, if not signed. And because the Cabinet Committee on Security has cleared the helicopters deal for the Navy. And there could be other areas, for example, in energy or on other areas of technology, where there are expected to be outcomes that we may see during this particular visit.
So, the other thing we've noticed is that every time US President Donald Trump has been around Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan, there has been the issue of Kashmir cropping up and Trump offering to mediate between India and Pakistan. This is something India has rejected. We've said it is, a bilateral issue. Do you think the issue of Kashmir would be brought up again during this visit?
Well, as you recall that President Trump first time raised this issue in July last year alongside Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. And thereafter, he's made those offers several times. But the Indian side has always reacted. In fact, Prime Minister himself had said this in front of President Trump in France in August last year in Biarritz on the sidelines of the G7 summit, where he had said that it's a bilateral issue and we'll resolve it bilaterally. So making it very clear that there is no scope or role of mediation by any third party. And President Trump, as you know, is an unpredictable leader, and we are aware of his unpredictable statements. So even if this issue he brings it up, whether in private or in public, the Indian position would not necessarily change.
Just to lead off from what you mentioned, that he's an unpredictable leader, we do see Trump as a volatile leader. One tweet could perhaps change US's foreign diplomacy with the country. Do you think that's why India is, going above and beyond, spending a lot of money, tiptoeing around this visit in particular?
Yeah, so President Trump is not the conventional US president. But having said that, his tweets doesn't always reflect change in US foreign policy. And with India, he understands foreign relations through a much more transactional perspective. As one who has had a past background in the world of business, where he prides himself in the art of deal, he would look forward to this pomp and show and this whole spectacle in terms of Namaste Trump and everything. But in the end, he is facing an election year. Although the opposition to him appears to be weak right now, but he would like to take something with him back home, back to the US, where he could sell it to his constituents about how he, created X number of jobs for American people. And I think that's how he would be looking at this particular visit. And the Indian government is mindful of that temperament of President Trump. And that is why it is negotiating on the trade aspect or on every other aspect with this knowledge in back of their minds.
Last, we take a look at how Ahmedabad is preparing for the visit. Gujarat correspondent Ritu Sharma explains how the number of people President Trump expects, some 7 million or 70 lakhs, to welcome him is probably lost in translation. That would be the entire population of Ahmedabad. The real number of the roadshow and the stadium combined is likely to be closer to around 2 to 2.5 lakhs.
The capacity of the Motera Stadium, we are told it's 1.25 lakh. So that would be filled, like the residents of districts of Ahmedabad and the surrounding districts, including Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, Vadodara, Sabarkantha, Anand, Khera. So residents from these districts have been mobilized for the stadium as well as the roadshow. So estimated number of persons to be taking part in the roadshow is around 1.15 lakh. Another 1.25 lakh for the stadium.
Usually when important foreign officials come to India, we see major beautification drives in the areas they're meant to visit. The same is happening in Ahmedabad. but at a much larger scale.
The beautification drive has been going on extensively in the city. Talking about the roads and all, the roads have been repaved. An estimated cost of 30 crore has gone into repayment of roads in a stretch of around 30 kilometers in and around the Motera Stadium. Further pavements, we can say, and extensive plantation drive of an estimated 1 lakh plants. That too includes fully grown palm trees that have been uprooted and replanted on the riverfront, Sabarmati riverfront. Then we can see huge hoardings that has come up across the city, welcoming US President Trump, and the First Lady was standing beside Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And we also see walls around the Motera Stadium, which has been painted with murals by one of the city-based NGOs that also has murals and all. We also have extensive cleaning and fogging drive that has been going in the city. Then the maintenance of stray dogs has been taken care of. Then monkey management at the airport.
But one particular attempt at beautification is causing some controversy. Ritu had initially reported about how a half-kilometer long wall was being built on the way from the airport. It was initially supposed to be 6 feet tall, and that would ostensibly serve to cover the Dev Saran slum behind it. After Ritu's report, the measurements have been changed to 4 feet. But the larger issue is this. Dev Saran is a decades-old slum area where about 2,500 people live. With Trump's visit, these people are being threatened with eviction.
Yeah, they have been threatened and they are still living under this threat. And recently, I'm told that they have also been threatened by one of the local political leaders who have actually gone and threatened them not to speak to any of the media any further. And if they would be doing that, they would be evicted, their houses would be taken away and all. So they have been really under this fear. The last when I spoke to the residents, so they were saying that they have been told to leave that area. And in recent past, what the authorities have been doing is they have been covering the area that falls on the road with temporary green sheets. And now they had built a wall. So the residents are under this threat. Now, with the coming up of the wall, probably their eviction is near. So they are very apprehensive about their houses and all. So the residents have shared with me that if this route is such a VIP route and this route carries so much of importance for the authorities, including the Prime Minister, so why have they not been included in the development? So they have been questioning, so where is their Vikas? Since we're talking about development, Gujarat model and all, so where is their development, their Vikas?
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.